Hey, this is Steve with Priority Bicycles, and today we're going to go over how to fix a flat on your Priority coast. It's always best to use a bicycle repair stand if you have the means to do that, but if not, you can flip it over and do it on the ground just as you normally would with any bicycle. So to do this job, you're just going to want a 15mm open-ended wrench, a Phillips head screwdriver, a 10mm open-ended wrench for the coaster strap, an 8mm open-ended wrench for the belt tensioners, a tire lever to pry the tire off of the rim, a standard rag just to run around the tire to make sure nothing's stuck in the tire, and an everyday bike pump. So to get started with undoing the coaster strap, you're just going to grab your Phillips head screwdriver and your 10mm wrench and insert your screwdriver right into the ridges in that, and your 10mm behind on the nut, and just undo this completely. Completely remove the bolt itself and the nut behind it, and place these to the side so that you don't lose them. The next step, we're going to grab our 8mm wrench and undo the belt tension. You can give it a few turns. You don't need to completely undo the bolt. You just need it so that the belt loosens up enough so you can completely remove the rear wheel from the dropouts. You're going to want to do the same on both sides. Counterclockwise is going to loosen up both bolts. Once these guys are nice and loose, you can grab your 15mm wrench and turn them both counterclockwise to loosen the bolts themselves. And again, you don't need to take them completely off, just loosen them enough so that you can pull the wheel out. Once they're nice and loose, you can slide the chain tensioners out of the dropouts and give it a good push so that the belt loosens up itself, and inch it off of the chainring. And then from there, you should be able to completely pull the wheel out of the dropouts and out of the bike itself. So once your wheel's pulled off the bike, we can start by unthreading the valve cap and putting that to the side so you don't lose it. And you really just want to make sure that there's absolutely no air in the tire, and you can use your tire lever just to press the pin in and kind of press down on the tire to get all that out. And then we can start taking the tire off. The easiest way is to start completely opposite from the valve to pry the tire off, because that's going to be the least resistant with the tire. Just scoop that under so you get a lip of the tire, and then rotate the tire lever all the way around until it frees up from the rim. Once we get there, we have one side completely free of the rim. We can reach in and grab the tube, pull this guy completely out, and then we're ready for a new tube. Once you pull your tube out, you can grab your rag and go through the inside of the tire all the way around, just to make sure that nothing's caught in there. And the rag really helps you so you don't cut your finger on anything sharp that may be stuck in the tire. That sharp object will probably get caught up on the rag once you're running it through. But if you don't feel any snags, you're ready to completely put in the new tube. Your new tube, and the easiest way to go about this guy would just be to throw a little bit of air inside the tube before you start the job, so that you get some shape in the tube, and that'll make it easier to mount into the rim. So give it 1 or 2 pumps, and then it'll start to take shape. Put the pump to the side again. Then once it takes a little bit of a circle, insert the valve into the rim. Press that guy in there, and then go all the way around and feed the tube into the tire. Once the entire tube is inside the tire, you can just rock it back and forth to make sure that it's seated into the rim. And start by seating the side that is free into the rim right around the valve. You always want to start at the valve and finish opposite end of the valve. So once that guy's seated inside the rim, you go around with 2 hands and feed the tire into the rim. Once you get to that last bit, it might take a little bit of an effort, but you just want to press that guy in there and then make sure you go around to make sure that the tire is seated inside the rim. And once it is, press this valve up to make sure that guy didn't get snagged. Pull it back out, and from there, you are ready to start putting air back into the tire. Press down on the valve right on top where the tire is, so that it doesn't fight back at you when you're putting the pump on. And then once it's latched down onto the valve itself, you can start pumping it up. For the coast, you always want to be right around 40 PSI. For paved roads, and if you're going off roads, maybe a little bit under 30, 35. Once you're pumped up to around 40 PSI, you just press this lever down and you'll start to hear a hiss and pull it right off the valve. Toss that guy to the side. You can take your valve cap and put that guy right back on. And from here, we're ready to install back into the frame. So once your valve cap's back on and your tire is pumped up and ready to be put into the bike, you can start by just placing this guy right on top of the dropouts. Make sure that everything's to the outside of the frame. Place the belt loosely around the cog. Doesn't have to be up on the front chainring. And then just make sure that this guy goes right into the dropouts. Slide it all the way forward. And you can tighten the axle bolts down with your hands just to keep everything in place. The first thing you're going to want to do is start by attaching the coaster brake strap again. So you're going to grab that Phillips head screw and the nut behind it and thread it through the frame and into the coaster brake. Make sure that bolt goes through and just loosely attach that guy with your hands. Definitely don't tighten it down all the way just yet. Once you have your coaster brake arm loosely attached to the bike, you can start by moving your wheel all the way forward into the dropouts, making sure your belt is completely wrapped around the cog in the back, and by hand you can wrap it around the front cog. And from there you can start to pull the wheel back and get those belt tensioners in place. Loosely, by hand, do the axle bolts so that it'll keep the belt tensioners in the dropouts. And once they're in the dropouts, you can start tensioning them so that your belt tension is correct. You're just going to want to grab your 8mm wrench again and give these guys a few turns until your belt seems tight enough. For Gates belts, we're going to want around 45 to 60 hertz on the Gates phone app, and that's the easiest way to measure how tight the belt is itself. So we're going to go back and forth from the right to the left side to make sure that the wheel is centered. Once your wheel is centered in the dropouts or right in the middle of the fender so that you have equal spaces on both sides. And your belt is tight enough, usually you can feel it by hand. You'll get about maybe a ½ inch in movement from bottom to top when you're wriggling it around. But to be sure, you always want to use the Gates app for your phone. That'll measure it by hertz. Give those a few more turns. And once you're tight enough, you can go and grab your 15mm wrench, tighten down both axle bolts, make sure that they're good and tight, and really put some force into it. A good way to know that your axle nuts are tight enough is so that you have a white indentation in the inside of your hand. Once those guys are completely tightened down, finish up your coaster brake strap with your screwdriver and 10 mil. Really tighten those guys down to make sure that this guy doesn't go anywhere. And from there, you're all buttoned up.